Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. And today I spoke with Gina Cavalier, and we got into how she found her purpose and how you can find yours. Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. We've had a brief discussion about Stonehenge and the beach, but how are you doing on the whole? Are you good?
Yes, so nice to meet you. Pleasure to be here and to meet all of your people and to be talking about important subjects. And love how we're across the pond and we can still
Great, isn't
connect
it?
to this level. Yeah,
I
it's
do
wonderful.
like that. I do like it. Before we actually get started, I just want to go off in a little sideways direction, because when you got up and moved a second ago, I seen there's a dog to your right, I think, and then there's another dog. Who are the dogs?
That's Simon. Simon, hey, he's licking himself. And Truman.
Nice.
So they're my, support team, my healing support team.
How long have you had them?
They're both 13. I've had him for
Oh,
13 years, and I've had him for about 7 years. They're both rescues.
yeah.
So I got him in downtown Los Angeles shelter, and I got him in the Valley shelter. And he actually was pretty badly abused and neglected, and he's really come full circle. And
That's nice.
um, yeah, I've always had animals in my life, and realized later on why I needed that healing grounding so much.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I have a Staffordshire Bull Terrier called Molly. She's about 12ish, because she's a rescue as well, so I don't know 100%. And I've had her about 4 or 5 years, and yeah, godsend. I mean, she's been amazing for me. And similar to your dog, she'd had a bit of a stressful life, so to see her kind of come full circle, and it's just a different dog to the one that I inherited, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow.
I have my second book is coming out at the end of the year. It's called Planet Walking, a handbook for the living. And I have a whole section in there about spirit animals. And I actually have stills of my dog, Milo, who was 18 years old. And he was a big, like, lab chow mix. So that he lived to 18. But his spirit actually came back to visit me the next day. And I caught it on Ring camera. And I have you can see him getting stronger and stronger and built. You can see it right in there. And he would ring the doorbell at 7:30 every time we would normally wake up. I mean, it's a camera, so it had to have been like enough energy to
Yeah,
activate the camera.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
and it happened for 7 days in a row until I got his ashes back, and then it stopped. But I have it in my new book about, it's about how, connected they are to us and things like that. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I found it astounding with Molly, because I was going through a rough patch at the time personally anyway. And of course, this dog come along who was having a real rough patch in her personal life. And for whatever reason, she just clicked with me out of everybody in the family, because I live with my mum and my brother. And my brother's the dog person. We're all dog people, but they tend to gravitate towards him. But for whatever reason, she gravitated to me. And there's just this weird thing, and dog owners will understand this, especially if you have a connection with your dog. The dog they can't hide how much they love you. And I just was like, this is it. Not overwhelming is the wrong way of. I didn't know, like, I'd never experienced that level of unconditional love before. So it was just like so new, nothing off-putting about it, but you're almost like, what am I supposed to do with this? And of course, I just adore dogs, so I just naturally adored her anyway. But to kind of get
Yeah.
this reciprocation and feel it, she just has this look in her eyes that she doesn't give to anyone else. And she goes nuts when I come home, and she doesn't do it with anyone else. There's all these things. And I joke, because I'll come in and she'll start running around barking at people. And it's if to say, you do realise he's home, don't you? Why are you not excited about this? And I might have literally just gone to the supermarket to pick up some groceries. And I'm back 30 minutes later, and it's like I've been gone a week. And she's just, oh my God, he's back. He's back. And I'm just saturated in love from her. It's amazing. You've muted your.
Oh, sorry.
That's
I
okay.
was sorry. making some noise, but
Oh yeah, don't worry about that.
I can't agree more. So yeah.
Oh, that's good. So anyway, we'll get on to why you were actually here.
Okay.
So how would you describe yourself? Because your website's got it's got kind of like the spiritual connection, the healing, and all that. But how would you describe yourself?
The word that's coming to mind, and it's kind of new, would be a journey woman.
Okay.
And that's because I've really shied away from creating too many labels, because I think a label it puts you in a box, and it creates an identity and almost like a barrier where you're afraid to step out of that box. And other people can create that for you, and you can create that for yourself. So I think the first thing that's coming to mind is a journeyman, a journey woman. And even on my business cards, I put on there supernatural angel, because that's what one of my friends told me I should put on my cards. And I forget that I have that on there. And it's a full business, like it's called Love and Media. We do media and content and films and all that stuff. And then I forget that it's on there, and I hand it, and they're like supernatural angel. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. And I like that because things have been so formalized for so many decades and decades. And especially when you're doing a business and the stuff that I'm doing, I want people to like have every experience they can with me be just easy, joyful, or we're evolving, or we're learning lessons. It's not always going to be pleasant, but even through conflict, we can be kind, and we can learn together. And so I just want every step of myself, people that their experience with me, I want it to be memorable. I want them to, like I said, have all these different emotions, and we kind of go through things together. So I kind of avoid the labels, but the proudest label that I think I have is author, because ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to write and be published. But because my circumstances in life, I didn't really get a formal education. And that label I put on myself, saying, you're never going to be an author, because, I really had only a 9th grade education. And even though I worked in very high profile positions in studios like Warner Brothers and Disney and stuff like that, I still had this ball of negativity hanging on me that I could never do my truest passion. And it was something that kept coming around and coming around. And then finally I had agents tell me, don't even bother. So many things that would like just deter me. And it was a soul thing that I finally said, I'm going to embrace this. And maybe I'm not perfect at it, but that's what editors are for. Or, I understood that doesn't mean that I have to stop my truest passion. So that's the one I'm the proudest of at the moment.
It is, because you mentioned something that's very important there, because people need categories so they think they can understand you. So when so it's just like if I will assume that if somebody says they're a plumber, well, I know what that means. If they say they're a mechanic,
you automatically start to create a little bit of label on it. Yep.
Yeah, and people kind of need that label because then they know what they are. And because I coach and I'm a hypnotherapist, and stuff like that, but I kind of fall into that category of a life coach. But I'm the same. Whenever I hear that, I don't think that's what I am. I'm just somebody that listens. But if I write, I'm just somebody that listens. Somebody's like, well, what does that mean then? Well, it means I listen. And it's kind of, but it's not self-explanatory to them, because they need a category and a label for it to sit in. And then you get into this long conversation about the importance of listening, and they'll talk to you for about an hour, and afterwards say, I think I understand. I feel a lot better now. He's like, it's because I listened.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously there's a place for it, like a resume, when people don't have a lot of time and you want to be efficient. And that's just being respectful. So there's a different levels, you know what I mean? But I think if, when I feel like I'm an experience,
Yeah.
and you're an experience, and we're having experiences together. So whether we're sharing time on a podcast or creating a project together, or you know, coming together to do a charity or to
Yeah.
help a goal, it's an experience that we're building together. So yeah.
But this is the thing, isn't it? Because, like I said, if somebody says on their resume they're a bus driver, I can picture what that is. But if somebody says they're a spiritual healer, if they're a coach, and somebody's like, "Oh, do you do this?" No, I'm not that type of coach. I'm not that type of healer. It's kind of like, well, why do people come and see you? Well, that's what they tell me. It's just like there's an almost a hollowness inside them. There's like a vacuum that draws or drags them in the direction of searching for answers they can't find for themselves, and you kind of help fill that in.
And that's why I've kind of even stayed away from like political labels, because I'm a little bit of a rebel. Like I don't want people to put me into something. I'm sorry. And so I buck at that. If there's a specific thing, someone will ask me, what do you think about X? I can download it and think about it. And then I can truthfully answer, what do I think about that? But I don't want to put that restriction on myself of going into my heart and truly looking at an issue and just putting a label on it. I have to be it that way, red or white or blue or whatever form. And so I think that creates sort of an energy also, that where it's kind of dividing people. And we're all brothers and sisters at the end of the day, and so we're just creating a another box and another division. And for me, I don't know where that started, and I know that it's probably never not going to end for hundreds of years. But if we could start to break away a little bit of those judgments and criticisms and like that, like the hard energy on that. Oh, that's for us as Democrat and Republican, and it's like, whatever happened to just like, coming together and we all have an opinion. And I think we would live in a better utopian like society if we didn't have those specific categories, that everybody just had one, a voice, and we could come together and make decisions together. So I stay away from the labels to that level as well.
I think with regards to, maybe, I don't know about politics as such, but the current communication issues that people have, where only one person can communicate, and unless you agree with me, we can't communicate with each other, even if it's just we disagree on one simple thing.
Oh yeah.
And I think one of the issues for that is, depending on what age you are, is you either grew up before the internet or after the internet. And
Yeah.
currently, the world is regulated by people who grew up before the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So every learned experience we have has some reference to before the internet ever existed, and we're trying to set laws and solve problems that we don't understand because we didn't grow up in the evolution of it. We are in a very fixed time point of, my world was better before this came along, and it's like, no. And by the way, I do think my world was better before the internet came along. But like you and I said at the beginning, being able to do this is a miracle, and it's amazing. And it's something that's absolutely fantastic, because you and I can connect across the pond, as you said, and just talk and just click, and you can pick up that energy, you can feel each other, and you can have a wonderful experience. But in terms of how positivity never needs regulating, because it always feels good, everyone's passionate, and it's always uplifting. It's negativity that needs to be regulated, but we're trying to do that without an experience of.
Well, also, I think people that we don't agree with are like, say, if we do have very set things, like, say I'm an animal activist, I don't really eat meat and things like that. Just, I don't try to put it on to other people, but I feel, to me, like I guess because I'm so close to animals, right? I don't want to judge that person, but I don't know where I went with that. But there's going to be people that have stark differences from us, but they actually are it helps us if we start to look at them as potentially as teachers. Because if everybody thought the same way, if
Yeah.
everybody walked the same way, we would never be learning or growing. And so I always ask people to consider the people that they quote unquote hate or send hate to. And I'm thinking about like political
Yeah.
parties, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be
Absolutely.
anything, right? But if you're sending hate to that person, so you hate their views, maybe look at them as a teacher. Maybe they opened up something that was hidden from us,
Mm.
or there's something in them that they're teaching us all that we need to pay attention to. So I just look at all these things as teachable opportunities instead of hateful
Yeah.
opportunities. And, and that helps me not have to carry around hate, that the energy of hate, because the only reason why I feel like I can be so productive, like I wrote 2 books this year and I'm doing a documentary, is the only reason I can do that. And what I've learned through my life is because I'm very careful about how I fill my glass up every day, and it's a choice. And it's, do I want to go down that stream of co-hate and co-complaining and, being a keyboard warrior and constantly doing all that stuff? Or do I want to, maybe I'll be an observer, maybe I'll make a comment here and there, but for reality, I start to go, this doesn't feel
Yeah.
good. Me throwing hate on another person, even though I don't really like them, let that process, let the universe handle it. I'm going to go towards my goals that I'm passionate about, because I find it really hard to create positive material if I'm been watching hateful content for hours or
Yeah.
whatever. And it's in my space, regardless of what you want to think about it or not. It is in your head, it's in your heart, it's in your place. So I have to go, oh my gosh, I have to get all that out that I just watched, and but I look at that, I have like a glass of water or a glass of energy, and it's like, what do I want to fill up that with? So, and I self-regulate that. That's
Mm.
only, you can only self-regulate that. You can't, nobody else can do that for you. But if people are having any type of hard thing in life, right? Like they have a depression, or they lost a job, or they have a divorce, and they're lonely and sad, really look at that, how you're filling up that energy, your energy jar,
Yeah.
and seeing how it's contributing, because you're really the only one who might be able to answer that question fully. And you need to be your own advocate 100%. And the reality is, when you fill up that jar with more positive ions, you're going to get a little bit of healed, but then it's almost like the vibration spills to everyone else, even your animals. Like it just kind of spills over, and you'll see that life starts to just shift a little bit, and little weird miracles happen. Like, how is that going to happen? How am I going to find a place to live in 4 days, or something? Like I
Yeah.
just had to move, we had mold in my house. And I just said, you know what? I think the universe is going to help me. I don't know why. And normally I would have been absolutely floored, like panicking, like losing my mind, can't sleep, can't eat. I don't know, panicking and just calling people and freaking out. This time I just, because I'm more practiced, I just was like, it's just all going to work out. And it did. And miraculously, something better came. And I think that's what spirit and energy, or if you don't believe in spirit, I call it energy. It if you it will start to line things up that better support your future, what you want to call in your life. So I'm really particular on how I fill up my jar.
No,
I call it jar.
no, that makes perfect sense to me. I still do use the analogy for people with, like, when they talk about their inner dialogue, and I say, imagine the purpose of your inner dialogue is to build a personal garden, whatever that garden would look like for you. Like what plants are in it, where are the benches, what's the scenery, and imagine it as beautiful as you can make it. And now whenever you think about something, or you absorb content about something, is that nurturing your garden or poisoning your garden? And if you're like,
I love it.
yeah, so if that was a whatever, whatever it is, you see people fighting or something. Okay, well, imagine putting that in your beautiful garden. Would that nurture that energy? And they'd be like, no, it's killing the plants. It's ruining the view.
Yeah.
It's ruining the scenery. Well then, don't put it in your garden, because you wouldn't create the world's most beautiful garden for yourself, your picture perfect garden. Like you and I were talking, you've got a view, you can see the beach. You wouldn't go and put a concrete car park there. That wouldn't be
No.
your way to
Yeah.
nurture it. So don't put that in your brain. Don't absorb something that would be like that for you.
I love it. And in my book, the new book, actually one of my guides came in earlier, and so I just want to mention it because for the garden, all gardens start small.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, it really helped me because especially if you're going through a trauma, and it hurts. These are painful things. You're going through a divorce, you have lawyers, you have kids, or things like that. It's very painful. You lost someone you deeply love. They died in a way that is just traumatizing to you. And there's in a way you need to restart, right? How do you restart? And I love your garden analogy. So I just wanted to add in that part, because sometimes when you're starting over and you're planting new seeds,
Yeah.
all gardens start small. It made me feel like part of me needed to start over, but it's okay. I'm filling it up with the things that are going to fill me.
Yeah.
What do I want in my garden? Like you said, daisies or fruit trees or whatever. Or do I want to fill it up with what? Yeah, like you said. So I love that. But I just wanted to add all gardens start small, because I think, especially when we have all this ageism coming in that's programmed into us that says, at a certain age, we used to have to say, what is your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? I mean, I used to just look at people and think, am I crazy? Like, I don't know. Like,
I've
what is
never
that?
had a plan.
And it used to overwhelm me, because I used to think, what's wrong with me that I don't have a 5-year plan? But see, I live more in the now. You can't, it's hard to really project that far in advance anymore. You know what I mean? And these are things that are programmed into you to make you feel like you're unworthy.
It is.
And that unworthiness is where we need to just say no.
It is, because you were saying
starting small.
Yeah, because sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh, that's fine.
Because like you've written a book, and you've got 2 more on the go. Is that correct?
Well, I have Surviving Suicidal Ideation.
Yep.
This I wrote with a trauma therapist, and this was published with the Swedenborg Foundation. They actually have a big office in London. And I actually did all the illustrations, and this has my personal story in it. And then my second book is Planet Walking, a handbook for the living. And that's a little bit more spiritual. But again, going back to, everybody told me I would never get a publishing deal, or I would. That's why, so many people, I mean, and I'm 54 right now. I'm going to be 55 in January. And it doesn't matter. I don't feel like, at least there's an age thing. Like I finally got it. And, it's like, I don't, as long as it happened, I didn't, what I'm saying is, even if I was like in my 80s, I still completed, like, it's still the thing that is part of my soul passion, that I completed it, to me is really important. But it doesn't matter if it's in your teens or in your 20s or in your 50s. It's just, that's just something that, to me, I wipe that off the board. And it's really interesting because as I've had this transformation, so I'm healing the suicidal ideation. So I was suicidal on and off most of my life, and I completely healed that. And when I realized that I completely healed it, like I can't even hold that kind of harmful thought in my mind at all. It's almost like my body completely rejects it. And it doesn't matter what I'm going through. I could be going through a breakup, losing a job, doesn't matter, because this all happened to me within a couple of years while I was writing the book. All those things were happening, and I don't know. I just crashed. It just that's not me. Boom, it's gone. And when I realized that, I desperately wanted other people to know that they can transform the way that they speak themselves and that they can actually heal this in them. It takes practice. It takes work. That's why I love the garden thing. It takes literally like building a new small garden,
Yeah.
planting new things, changing the way you speak to yourself. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it can be done. And I would have loved to know that from someone else like 10 years ago
Yeah.
is the reason why I'm doing it now, because our time is so valuable. And I'm not looking back on regret, but I would love to have had 10 more years without suicidal ideation or whatever, So I want people to know this can happen. And I'm an advocate for, I'm a voice saying this can happen. And so someone who says, really, I can have that not in my life anymore. Yes, I believe fully that you can.
It's some, actually, I've got a question about that based on my own experiences, because I don't know if I mentioned this to you when I emailed you, but because I wrote a book on reincarnation from the point of view of somebody that committed suicide.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, yeah,
Wow.
it was called, I wrote it about 22 years ago. About 10 years ago. It's called 22 Floors. And so the clue is in the title. And and it's about somebody that commits suicide, and how the soul reincarnates. 22 floors being he jumped off a 22 floor building, and it's how the soul reincarnates into the next journey before it hits the floor. And
Wow.
and it was a kind of cathartic response. It was a type of therapy, because in my late 20s I was sat in at Earl's Court tube station in London thinking about which train to step in front of, and I had no like massive like big moment. I just suddenly like, it's not who you are, so get on the train. And so I just went back to where I was living in Wimbledon. But the thing about it that, and this is where I like to share the insights, is the journey should be everything got better, but that's when the real problem started. And it took me a long time, like almost a decade, to figure out the problem was on that path going down that road of getting towards suicide and thinking about suicidal thoughts and stuff like that. I was investing a huge amount of time in hating myself, to the point that every time I looked in the mirror, I was disgusted, absolutely loathed that person in front of me. And it kind of creates, I don't know a better way of articulating it, but it kind of creates a trauma. It's like an open wound that's a constant self-perpetuating trauma that just gets worse and worse and worse. And when I realized I'm not doing this because it's not who I am, the problems really then came down on me like tenfold. I got into trouble with the law. I ended up bankrupt because I'd anchored myself in so much loathing for who I was that there was just no way anything positive could happen. And I had to, like, cognitively, on a real strong mental level, start figuring out ways to like who I was.
Yeah.
You have to get to a point where, and it doesn't mean waking up every day and think, wow, I'd certainly have never learned to love myself like my dog loves me, and I've certainly never seen myself in the same eyes that my dog sees me in. But it's you. I suppose it's not learning to love yourself; it's learning to just have some compassion for yourself. And when you do get days where you're going to beat yourself up, do it with a feather. Be gentle about it, and then you can kind of nurture a love from that place.
I do think it's love yourself, actually, for me. When I realized that I liked myself, I thought it was pretty cool. Actually, I was like, oh, you're an interesting person, but I don't love you. And I realized that
You put yourself in the friend zone.
Yeah, I love my partner. I love my friends. I love my job. I love what it gave me, like, the sense of purpose. And I loved and anytime anybody needed anything, like they need a job, they need a place to live, they need to move, like I was always like trying to be the person that was everything to everyone. And it was because I had unhealed childhood wounds, and I was desperately trying to hoard people and friends so I wouldn't be alone. And so I didn't have to deal with loneliness, and I didn't have to look at everything. and that if I did everything for them, they wouldn't leave me,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't be mean to me. That is the furthest from the truth. They were actually more mean to me. They took advantage of me, because the people I called into me were also traumatized people that were unhealed. So we were just trauma people messing with trauma people, right? And just, it created a more negative world. And so don't even blame them. That was who I was accepting. That's who I was calling in. I didn't have any boundaries. I was like, take all my energy, take all my happiness. I'd be grateful to give you all my love and happiness. And then I would wind up with nothing. And then I would wonder why I was so depleted and so depressed and felt so alone and worthless. And so it actually is, I did have to fall in love with myself. And I tell people all the time, I actually fell in love with myself as I would, my ex-husband, where I was deeply in love with. I actually did that with myself. I was like, I love myself so much. It's like, I feel kind of silly sometimes, because I do put myself first at all cases. I just have to. I don't do it to be negative towards any other person, but I do, I have to sometimes bow out of relationships. I'm sorry. I'm like, this isn't aligning. I wish you well. Like, and that is so much self-love. I would have never done that before. And then I get like this sense of like, you put yourself first, like, congratulations, So I did fall in love with myself. But the coolest thing about falling in love with myself, I think what happened is, everything has a secondary response, right? So because I fell in love with myself and I started loving the work I was doing and how every person in my life right now, we cherish each other, whether it's a friend or a business relationship. And it's just high vibes, and it's exciting. I meet people all over the world on podcasts and everything. And I have friends in Portugal and London, and like, we like tell each other, I love you. Like, we feel soul connected. Like, every one of my relationships is just like, is a beautiful flower bouquet. Even when we have conflict, we work through it differently and compassionately. But the best part of all this, I'm getting chills as I'm saying this, is my life purpose was hidden in my pain. And I didn't find it until I healed it. So now my life purpose is, I roll out of bed just excited for every single day, regardless of what it is, because I'm living with my heart open and outward. And I'm just saying, who wants to come, and there's the judgments are falling off, and I just get to, but so when people do want to feel, every single person comes into this planet with gifts and themes in their life. And because you do soul reincarnation, that you come into this world with a purpose. So that's why when you're feeling like, I don't know what my purpose is, there is an unveiling of a purpose that you're supposed to do. But the first one is to evolve and learn. Everybody has a life purpose, but we do have secondary life purposes and that we can uncover. And that's sort of what I teach in my book, is how to find your second primary life purpose, which is how I found mine, which is a cipher, which is how I download information and I put them in books for people. So
let's focus on that. When did you discover that, or what was that pathway that the gate opened?
For which part?
The bit where you start listening to guides, downloading the cipher.
Okay. So when you go through like a path of, as you know, I'm sure, when you go, oh my gosh, I have to change this, and you recognize that's not you anymore, everybody's going to go on a path of healing. And it could be a year, it could be 10 years, like you said, right? And what it is, but think of it as like, I tell people, look at it as like a mountain, and there's different paths in the mountain. We're all climbing mountains all day long, right? But if you have your eyes open and your awareness, and you're like, okay, what path do I go down now? They will start to enlighten for you. Like, I'm going to go down this path of healing. I'm going to work with this teacher. I'm going to, whatever feels right. And you start to unpack what you need. And so I started to unpack what I needed, which was healing from my childhood trauma. I wasn't going to fix many things in my life unless I looked at that first. So that became a priority for me. Everybody's different. So I had to look at the trauma, but I had to find therapy. I had to find teachers. I had to find spiritual stuff, whatever I needed to get to that point where that what I wasn't so triggered anymore. It's not like it's healed forever gone. It's just I had to learn how to deal with the triggers because the triggers were bringing in the same.
Yeah.
I married my first husband. It was an alcoholic, just like my father, right? So you're calling in the same people. So once I healed that, and then I started to be able to pick practitioners and going, wow, this person, like a life coach, like say you coming out, wow, you might just come into that person's life and they go, you're exactly what I need today. Thank you. And then they work with you for a few months. And then inside you start to get a thing saying, you know what? I think it's time to move on. You start to get really honed in on your intuition and understanding that you have an internal guiding system that's leading you to where you need to go. And letting that say, hey, I'm sorry, I've worked with you for a little while. I think I want to try something else. Learning how to do that. Go on to the next practitioner. Maybe you learn acupuncture. Maybe you learn meditation. Maybe you learn. And so all these things start to unfold. And then you get to a point where you can like hone it down. Like one of my clients, we finally got to her theme, which is hands-on healing. And now she's going to school to be, to learn acupuncture. And now she's so excited. She feels like her whole world is coming up. She was like doing social media stuff and, things that really weren't fulfilling her heart.
Mm-hmm.
It took a while, years to really unload what her thing is. Now she's in school and she's like, oh my gosh, Gina, it's exactly what we thought, what we came to. It's like, I'm going to be a licensed practitioner. I'm going to have my own clients, so, everybody's different. So, but you just have to see those mountains. Every time you climb a mountain, you're going to climb another one. But what happens is the paths start to enlighten a little bit more once you get clearer. Because when you're depressed and you're in a fog and you're suicidal, you're in a fog. You can't see those paths. All you see is a drop off. You are disconnected, right? You feel there's a cloud around you. And you can't see those paths ahead of you, and there is no hope. And that's what I'm here to do, is to help people that let's pull those clouds off. Let's open up those pathways again. Fall in love with each lesson that you're going to learn, good and bad, and understand that they're going to make you into a more interesting person. Take these things that happen to you as experiences that happen for you, not to you, and don't try to avoid them because they're not going to go away. Conflict never goes away. And we don't teach this in schools, which is something I think we need to do with kids. It's like teach kids how to fight with each other a little bit, like how to do it respectfully.
Yeah.
It's conflict. It's going to be conflict. So that's why we're seeing kids that are becoming suicidal at an earlier age, because they don't know how to deal with conflict.
They don't know how to deal with anything. They don't, they've never experienced real disappointment. They've never experienced any real hardship. They're constantly protected. And then when they get to a point in their life where they have to start making decisions and making choices, they have no skill set, no experience, no confidence, and they all just like, I'd rather not. And then what happens is, as they become, and I've pointed this out to people, and it's very pertinent for people who are still at school or college or university. It's a false reality, because you're there for a specific purpose, and those people that you think are lifelong friends, well, that's because you've only been alive 15 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And what's going to happen is, in another 5 years, whenever you leave, like secondary school or high school in America, maybe you go to college, maybe you don't, you will notice that all of those friends disperse, and you might never see them again, even though they only live around the block, because you have no reason, there's no purpose anymore to go to that location, which was, you will discover, is the only reason you were friends. You didn't have a connection with them. But now you've lost your known support groups, You don't know independence because you've never had it. You don't have any experience on how to make decisions. Nobody's ever really pushed you to discover what you want, to know what you like and don't like. And because you never failed at anything when you were 5, 7, 11 and 12, you're petrified now of failing when you're an adult. And when you end up with something really disastrous, like somebody cheats on you, breaks up with you, you don't get a job, something that was really important to you, you have no grounding or ability to deal with, things that just happen in life to everybody.
Yeah, it's really bad. I don't know how bad it is in UK, but it's really bad in the United States. Really, really bad. I mean, they have, executors at large universities that have, they pull the smartest kids aside, and they give them all these scholarships and let them create. I'm talking about these smartest kids, right? That are normally given these giant grants to create new things because they're like geniuses. And they're saying now that when they're doing these big scholarships for these geniuses and the smartest people in America, they're getting all these grants and these things, and most of them don't want to. They're too afraid to fail, so they actually don't even want to start their projects. They're just too afraid to fail at the end of the day, and it's like it's like they're saying this is 911. This is happening to the brightest and the smartest, and they can't take on these projects and they can't create anymore. So they're not creating these new technologies and these new things to help society. Yeah. And they were the ones we would look to as to create these new things.
I have a bit of a theory on that, because we've just gone through this recent thing in the UK where somebody was put in prison sentenced to 18 months in prison because they put something on Facebook that was found offensive. Now, yeah, and you're only talking about, your average comment. It wasn't even
really?
Most people.
Yeah. Look that up.
Yeah. And but it was against the wrong religion, so you've gone to prison. And
wow,
the thing about that's going to be problematic is young kids, young adults are seeing that, so they're not going to speak up in challenging situations because we've already gone through cancel culture. But cancel culture wasn't enough, so now we're going to put you in prison if we disagree with you. And when the Prime Minister of the UK is putting people in prison because he doesn't like what they say about politics, who's going to stand up and say anything?
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be the generation that's growing up under this, or they will rebel. And when the pendulum swings, it will go much further in the opposite direction than anybody could have dreamed of. And it will be an alternative nightmare.
Oh, I agree. I don't think that's a good way to handle that. I mean, I think, we have Elon Musk over here with X, and there's lovers and haters. But the one thing I agree that he says is that where do you start if you're going to start censoring people? There's difference where there's break the laws, like something is like, you're threatening someone, violence, and there's different thing like that. That's a lawful thing. But when you're talking about censoring somebody's thought, where do you start, and who's the master of that? And that becomes a very slippery slope. And I kind of agree with that, because it's like who's creating that, and what is their background? So how do you know if it's, what I mean? So that is a little bit dangerous.
You've just experienced it in universities. That comes from they've seen people say things that people didn't agree with, and they lost their jobs, got threatened. So, well, why would I speak out or say anything that somebody might deem offensive? Because if I do, something's going to happen to me.
If I look at that as an energy, though, that goes back to the thing of labeling about because now you're creating that a whole generation of people that are going to feel repressed. And this is all energy, right? So you get repressed, and then you have resistance, and then you have rebellion.
Yep.
All the R's, right?
The pendulum swings.
Yeah. So they say it only takes 3% of a collective to really agree on something, to take down something like that. Like I said, if 3% of America said, we don't want X or something, not X, but, or Y or something else. But They could actually create a big havoc in the, so, 3% of the population of America, which, I don't know the numbers, but think about that in the millions, right? If they all decided to no longer buy something or do something, they can make a huge impact. It only takes 3%. I'm sure it's very from the UK for people to rebel against that and to change it. So
yeah, it's strange. Oh, we went off on a tangent there. I'm not sure how. Oh yeah, because you were telling me about the university students.
But yeah, and I want to. I'm here to help those people that are in those fearful ways, because everything we create is energy, and it's so important to create. Like, I'm even going back. I wrote a lot of nonfiction books to help people, but now I'm going back to fiction. I have a 5-book, I call it, it's like a Harry Potter series that I already wrote the first book with my co-author, but I'm writing this whole creative series, and it's family entertainment, and it has a lot of morals and a lot of fun. And I used to think that I have to constantly be out there helping people with my platforms, of healing and things like that, which is true. It's a part of me. But now I'm giving myself permission to go and play and create these other books and these other movies, that for me, is very joyful. But in this creation is so important, whether it's a movie or, even if you want to be an accountant, whatever you're creating, a business, when you create a business, that is just that energy is so amazing to just create with your heart, with, take out the expectations in the beginning, just create and see how it affects the world. And we just, do that, with love, and you're going to see it affect your life so differently.
So if somebody is listening to this,
yes,
what are the things they can do? What's the right thing to do? Like, what do they do right to get to this place where you are now?
First, make a commitment to yourself to do the work, whatever that work is for you. I would really identify what your needs are. I literally would have a list of things I wanted to work on in wounds that were private to me, things that, this experience made me like this experience triggers me. So I had kind of awareness, because awareness is such a big word, important word when you're doing this work. It's like, oh, I'm just triggered because that reminds me of this, and it affects me deeply. Oh, now I have an awareness of that. I'm going to tell that person that loves me, hey, when you do that, that triggers me, and have like a nice conversation with them, and they have awareness now. So instead of just living off the edge of the seat constantly, and not understanding why life is overwhelming, being like, oh, taking accountability for everything that you say and you do, but also without punishing yourself. Give yourself permission. I love to say give yourself permission, because a lot of times we don't give ourselves permission. Give yourself permission to have fun. Give yourself permission to maybe not be on a time clock constantly. Oh, I got to be this. I got to be here. Like, it takes you out of being in the present moment. Being in the present moment is where you make the best change. And what I mean by that is, there's some people who live way too far in the future and is trying to like, oh, when I meet the right man, I'm going to have this life and I'm going to have that life. And then it doesn't come, and then they get depressed, and, it's too far into the future creation. But we have to plan things. Planning is okay, but don't live in the future, and then don't live too much in the past. We have to curate ourselves based on our past a little bit. And I used to get stuck in the past. When I was doing my healing, I realized I lived in the past a lot, and I would think about the things that would happen to me, and I would think, oh, that's just going to happen again. And actually it would happen again, because I was holding it. I was curating it. I was letting it live in my space. So I try to honor the past and live here today in the future, and being in the present moment is the best thing. And you'll really start to find natural grounding and ground. Like, when I was in a bad space, like I was klutzy, things would always happen to me. I would get in car accidents. I would fall downstairs. I mean, I used to think I was just a klutz. What was really happening is I was completely ungrounded.
Yeah.
energetically and everything. Like, so everything came to me, it would just be like chaos, right? So I learned how to ground. I learned how, earthing, because what's happening as we become more modern is our environment's different than what we originally tending. We have Wi-Fi radio frequencies running through our energy system on a daily basis. We're ingesting meat that has all these chemicals in it and antibiotics in it. Like, there's like, our bodies are amazing machines in our brain, like everything about being a human. And that's also, what I love is like amazing. We are just like the best thing, like so beautiful, the way that our system constantly creates for us and works constantly, but we have to realize that that's getting jacked up a little bit in the modern version of us. So that's why grounding is important. And if you could do that through going into nature or through meditating, and just, calming your mind and thoughts, but just having that practice, whatever works for you. Sometimes it's just listening to music, putting on a sleep meditation, anything you need. If you need to dance, put on some Bee Gees or whatever, I don't know, go crazy. There's a way to shake it all off. That's what dogs do.
That's exactly what they do. Yeah, they do. They shake it off.
What they're doing is they're shaking off the energy. They start from their head, you'll see it, and they're fluffing off the energy. And when they do that, and it's a way that humans need to recognize that they need to do that too. That we're just this beautiful energetic system, and we are being affected. What works for us that resets us? And when you start to see how amazing, beautiful you are, like, you start to go, oh wow, I'm pretty cool, I'm pretty neat, no matter what form you're in, what color you're in, what station in life you're in. You picked that. Enjoy it. Figure out why you have the things that you have. Figure out why you called in the parents you have. And, I just got to the part where I appreciate everything I chose. And I kind of even got to the point where I understand why I chose everything I did. And that's a really good place. If you can I haven't
got there yet. I haven't understood that yet.
Yeah. Then you can really appreciate everything and go, wow, okay, now I see why I'm here. And then I feel like I have a second life now, it's kind of cool.
When did you first start to notice, whether it's hearing guides, seeing guides, or feeling energy, seeing energy, when did you first start to notice?
Oh, I was a kid, but it would scare people when I would tell them. And, I was a 70s kid and my mom was, a 60s mom. And so she was just like, oh, well, you must just be possessed. And I'm like, really? You mean like that movie Exorcist? Like, I was scared to death. And then when they would play other movies and I was just like, I see dead people too, or I see energies too. And I literally was just terrified. So I blocked it out for a big part of my 20s. And but I always wanted to heal people. Like, if someone was hurting, my instinct was to, oh, can I go help you? And I'd put my hands on you. And then if something would say, why are you doing that? Then I just realized that my nature was to heal and to part of who I was. But I was really embarrassed. I lived in LA at the time. I was married to like a pseudo rock star. He's an Irish guy. His name's Dave King. He's in a band called Flogging Molly, which is really big in UK and stuff. And I was living in that whole world of rock and roll, and I kind of was embarrassed for a while.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't want them to think I'm going to become this like hippie girl. And so I kind of would hide my spirituality in the closet. Like, I wouldn't have my crystals out or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean.
But now I'm just who I am, and that's such a great place when you be who you are and you accept who you are and you don't really care what other people think. Oh my gosh, when that happened, that's such, get there if you can get there, because it feels good. I don't have any qualms if anybody has any judgments on me anymore. I worried about that so much, and I think a lot of people do.
I'd say that was probably the biggest anchor I had in my 20s and my 30s, is not only worrying what people would think about me, but the reason that that's significant is because it actually stopped me doing things I was curious about and things that I wanted to potentially pursue, because I was just worried about, well, what would so and so think? And it took me
I did it for years.
Yeah, and it took me a long time to get past. And I wouldn't say it definitely, I don't think, well, for me, it's never disappeared. What changed was recognizing that it's about. And it's like, oh, right, so you're worried about somebody that's not in your life and what they think about you. Right. So that definitely means you have to go and do it. So the fear can still be there, and I'll feel it, and I'm much more aware of it. And so now it's just like, oh, right, yeah, that little shadow's turned up again, hasn't it? Well, you need to go and stand in some sunshine and do something about it. And it's, again, it's like going back to that garden analogy. You start with a little garden, you figure out what you like, and you get a little bit, the garden grows. And as the seasons grow, you learn that some trees don't do as well as you hope they do, or they don't do what they want to do. And you plant something new, and the garden evolves as you evolve. And you have to kind of see it as that moving picture with the seasons. The things come and go, and there's a flow to that. But whenever something comes in and it starts stamping on the flowers, you have to be, no, we don't do that. There's rules to the garden. And
yeah, I mean, I'm lucky enough, I feel now, like I appreciate every person that I've had a cross relationship with. I see it from a different viewpoint now. And I'm grateful for the lessons that they taught me. And that sort of, to me, was the final stage of healing.
Yeah.
So that comes a little bit later, and I always talk about that later, because if somebody told me I had to forgive my exes for the things that they did in the beginning while I was in my healing, I would have just given them the fingers. You know what I mean? Like,
no,
and
I do.
It would have not.
I was talking to a lady. I was talking to a lady this afternoon called Sarah, and she's in her 70s now. An incredible journey, but one of the things that she had to figure out was how to forgive the man that brutally raped her when she was in Africa, and she was talking about that, and she's written a book about the whole process. And when she said that when she started to forgive, that she talked about the huge weight that she felt it physically leave her body, and it's that, and this is what her and I kind of had a bit of a discussion about the reason you have to find a way, and I think it is different for everybody. So I don't think, maybe it's not, but I've never figured out how to truly forgive people yet. But I'm in a much better place. But what I realised was it has nothing to do with them. It's actually the reason you forgive them is because it releases you. It doesn't release them from anything. It's not about them. And that's literally that's like drinking the poison and then complaining that you're getting poisoned. It's no. That forgiveness is something that you release from yourself because it cures you, and it removes a toxicity from you. It moves a weight from you. And when you're able to do that, you kind of, I think something you were saying earlier is you get an understanding where the trigger points come from and why you ended up in that toxic cycle that brought that person into your life. And kind of forgiveness is a bit like seeing the broader picture on the map of where A to B actually is. Yeah,
because if I was to look at someone who did some bad things to me, and now I can go, oh, but I let you in.
Yeah.
I have a responsibility. I didn't have boundaries. I didn't do my work. So you're not all fully responsible. We have such a right, and we have I'm right and a righteousness energy with us. And that's a really hard one to learn, is to being righteous, because I still have to check myself a lot still. I have to go, I was watching all this Diddy stuff, and I was just like, commenting on stuff or thinking about stuff. And I was like, I don't want to step in that energy. I'm not righteous. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, I have an opinion, but like on some things, but let it work out the way it's going to work out. Do I need to jump into that and make a comment? And then that I realized, oh, that's really healthy thinking. You know what I mean? Because I'm going back to that, I have only a limited amount of space and I have a lot of things to do. Am I going to jump into that pool? No, because it doesn't help me. It doesn't help them. It doesn't help anybody. So, and that's also what the media preys on, is that we're going to do that and capture us. And what it
Yeah.
does is it does collectively put us into an energetic pool of hatred
Oh yeah.
and cancel culture, you know? And that's why I have to look at it like that. And I'm like, ooh, do I want to jump in that pool? No, I don't. Okay, I'm out. But if once you get practicing that, it really does feel a lot better.
Yeah. I mean, that's why, you know, lots of people say, you know, you need to just unplug from social media for a bit and really limit your
when
time.
you can self-check, when you can self-check it and go, nope, I don't want that. Like, you know, because there is sensationalism. They're professionals at what they do to capture your attention. You know, all of these social media companies are billion-dollar companies with a lot of smart people, a lot of programming. You're not going to win.
Oh,
in a way, like they're going to still know how to capture you if you don't learn how to self-evaluate yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to teach kids, that they don't have the information yet to train themselves not to stop or to have to self-reflection, you know, on these apps and stuff. That's what we need to teach them. And parents and friends need to teach them that. They don't understand. As adults, we should know, like, we have to self-monitor. You know, they pay a lot of money for us to see ads and to continue on there, but the kids don't understand. So
no.
we need to, you know, I always go back with a lot of my agenda is like, when I'm talking to anybody, is like, if we can't think about ourselves as an adult, let's think about for the children. So help heal yourself for yourself, but also the kids are only mimicking what the adults are doing, period.
But I think
the adult,
so I was going to say, I think
when around utopia, being kind to each other, they would do the same thing.
Of course, yeah.
Bullies, a bully is they learned it from someone, either their parent or someone at school or a peer or something like that. So as adults, we're the ones who's looking to the future, is looking to us. And this is why you and I are talking and why we do this work. I mean, this is, you know, we don't make money doing this. This is just to say, hey, we're talking to people, trying to lift people up, because the kids are the ones that are really suffering, and they're looking to the adults for these conversations. That's why it's so important to self-regulate and to understand what you're putting in that cup of yours and how you're contributing to the world, because it really does affect everybody. Every single person is valuable, extremely valuable.
One of the things when you and I were talking, one of the things I wanted to just run by you, because we were talking about the forgiveness part, because it reminded me of an issue I had with somebody in the past, and I was meditating on it, because trying to kind of understand, you know, why would they do that to me? How dare they? Blah blah blah. And what came up in the meditation was I owed them an apology. And I should be sorry. And you can imagine, like, in the middle of this meditation, I'd gone quite deep and I was just furious. Like, almost like, fucking dare you say that I'm the one that was wronged. And it came about that, why did you want their validation? You drew them into your life, created this pain. And that's not fair on them. They didn't ask for that. And it was kind of this weird, like, hang on a second, you're literally saying, because of these kind of like the toxic wounds and stuff, I brought in somebody to point that out to me, but in doing that, I effectively wounded them, and that's on me. And even now, there is a little smidgen of me that begrudges the apology that was heartfelt, and I really had to dig deep. And there's still, I swear, like, there's still an energy of me that's like, yeah, I'm still not done forgiving this, even though I do have an awareness that I did it to myself, and in doing that,
and you might not do it this lifetime, but it really helps when you realize that you are always a little bit right and a little bit wrong, all of us.
Yeah,
right?
I like to be right. I try to specialize in just being right.
I know, but yeah. But I try to remember that. And then when I really learned that, oh, I can be a little bit wrong. And like, I'm like, that helped me too. Cause I'm like, oh, okay. When I have a thing with someone's wrong, upset about me with something, I go, okay, I'll take that. But here's where my point of this is for you. So it's like taking that accountability. I like that. Even for myself, I say I'm a little bit right and a little bit wrong. If I go in with that on a situation at work or something like that, it actually helps
Yeah,
because instead of just bringing in that righteous energy, the righteous energy is very.
it is. It is.
We don't know what to say anymore.
No, I just want to finish on a completely random question, not related to anything that we've spoken
Okay.
about. But just before I ask the question, what is the book and where do people find you?
Well, this is Surviving Suicidal Ideation, and this is on Amazon or anywhere like that. I want to say hi to my cousin, Jancita Faulkner. She, where does she live? I'm trying to think. Somewhere in England. She's going to get all mad at me. But then my second book is coming out at the end of the year, Planet Walking, a handbook for the living. And it's kind of taken off the Tim Burton Beetlejuice movie, the handbook for the recently deceased. Because when I first saw that movie, I was like, what about a handbook for the living? So when this publisher asked me if I had any more books, I was like, I think I want to do that one. So that's coming out at the end of the year. And that's a little bit more of it's kind of written for millennials in a way, because they're just little chunks about spirituality and how it works. Not like a giant book of, Akashic records and reincarnation. It's just little chunks of information. So people can have like a mini awareness of different things. So, and I'm doing a 6-part docu-series I'm raising money for. I have a trailer for it. I have a whole Ukrainian film crew. They've all been displaced and living in Los Angeles trying to get work right now. And Max Balter, my director, his father committed suicide when he was 11 and in the Ukraine, and it was very shameful. So they told everybody he had a heart attack. So, he agreed to sign on, and he's a brilliant director. And we're coming together to bring levity to the subject, to even, so people can find a way to start talking about it more, so they can reduce the stigma and the shame around it, and finding more content and programs that support people who are suffering, so they don't feel like they're alone and they're the only ones dealing with it, because they're not. And just doing the best we can to provide as much content as possible.
And what's your website?
theliberatedhealer.com, and ginacavalier.com is where my artwork is. And and I'm on all the different platforms as well. And I'm happy to talk to people, and they can send me a note and I'll reply.
Yeah, no, and I'll put the links in the description.
Okay.
So the random question is, I want you to just imagine that you somehow have got a time machine. Where would you go? Why would you go there? What car would you drive? And what music would you be listening to?
Oh, I am definitely kind of the middle 1800s person. Like I actually have full dreams back in that life. I would definitely be riding a horse and buggy. I'd probably be living in New York somewhere in like Manhattan, and I'd be listening to Beethoven for sure.
Nice. That'll do.
I feel very connected to Beethoven and his work, and I've seen how his energy came into it so he could write, and I just think that humans, all of us are beautiful, and we all have gifts, and think about a person like him who was practically deaf and creating that work. So don't let anything limit you. Be like Beethoven.
That's right. That's perfect. Thank you very much. And that was Gina, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. I really enjoyed talking to her. And like many guests I've had on, there's this theme about you don't have to be depressed. You don't have to be unhappy. There are answers, there are solutions. So do please check out the description. You will see the links to Gina's books, her website. Check her out. She might be able to help you. And as always, to everybody that listens, subscribes, likes, shares, and watchers, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. And wherever you are from, whatever you believe, please do take care and be blessed. Thank you.